I've never seen Vegas like this. Like Black Hat has gone full fucking RSA. Like you literally, there's nowhere for people to eat. There's nowhere for you to meet anybody. Every bar, every restaurant in all of Mandalay is booked out for an
Oh my
event
God.
with a private list. So like
Mike.
people literally had nowhere to go have lunch other than like the shitty fucking conference food.
The
It was,
Starbucks line is 40 deep at all
dude,
times.
it was rough. But you know what? At the same time, way fewer people. I don't know what the official
Really?
numbers are going to be from Black Hat, but like, I don't
It
know,
looks
man. Like
sparse to you?
it looked sparse to me. I don't know if that was just my impression. I don't know. But it wasn't quite like the COVID Black Hat. Like that was one of the best. Like the post-pandemic Black Hat where like no one was there. That was fucking awesome. This wasn't like that. It was just slower, just sparser in a way
Interesting.
that I don't know. It seemed to signal some things for me, but
Hello,
I'm
everyone.
just happy
This
to
is
be
the
out there.
Three-Body
Oh,
Problem. We're up to episode 108 on Saturday, August 8th at 9 a.m. here in Phoenix, Arizona. Kostin is back from vacation again in Istanbul. What did we learn there? Did we learn anything new and interesting? Any little Istanbul nugget for the audience? How are things over there?
what did we learn?
Things are definitely better than in Bucharest, because in Bucharest it feels like it's the end of the world. Like there's,
The
I don't
heat?
know, a terrible drought. They're going to shut down the nuclear power plant because there's no more water to cool it. The Hungarian people are doing the same with their nuclear power plant. There's like no more electricity. I don't know what's going on. It's crazy.
And you got drones being intercepted in Romanian villages?
That's normal. Like that's just normal
Really?
nowadays.
Boy, not
Who
that
doesn't
it's
have
scary.
drones like that?
And probably it's like 123 degrees outside by your
Oh my
degrees.
goodness. No, no air conditioning.
degree.
Which I have no idea what that is, but it sounds very frightening.
Quickly, while I have you here, this episode is sponsored by TLP Black, returning again for another stint as sponsors of the Three-Body Problem. Kostin, quickly tell the audience what Three-Body Problem is. What do you guys do?
What three-body problem
what
is?
TLP
Sure.
Black
Sorry, sorry. You see how unprepared I am?
Three-body
Tell the audience
problem.
about TLP Black.
TLP Black. TLP Black is a boutique threat intelligence company for knowledgeable people. So we can look into sophisticated threat actors, difficult, incident response cases, pretty much everything that, let's say, matters, and you need specialists to look at. So that's what
Are
we
you
do.
guys doing like IR Mandiant style IR
We-
for like big infections?
I don't know if it's Mandiant style because I've
I mean,
never
that's
seen
how the
Mandiant
audience
style.
will understand it. Yeah.
Well, I would say that we're very thorough, and we try to get to the bottom of the incident and understand how it happened. Try to help, with the restoration of services. Also, of course, provide recommendations on how to avoid something like that in the future. We've even tried to crack the encryption in case of ransomware attacks to solve the encryption issue. Unfortunately, no luck so far because every single case was pretty solid. But I'm confident one day will come and we'll be able to find some weakness in ransomware and be able to crack it as we've done it before.
Fantastic. Juanito, how good is he at the ad now? He's getting better and better, isn't
Dude,
he?
he's sharp. He's sharp. We're getting worse, and he's getting better at it, right?
I'm
The
calling
production
it
quality's
Three-Body
better,
Problem.
right? Yeah.
But tell us what does Three-Body Problem do?
Three-Body Problem is this thing you're listening to. Juanito is freshly back from Black Hat. You mentioned how miserable the eating situation was there. Give me a sense of the pulse on the ground there. I saw Harun Mir from Thinks, shout out to our friends at Thinks, mention how AI pilled the entire show floor felt. And you just look around everywhere and there's marketing messages that they've got AI to solve all the world's problems, which is kind of expected. What was your sense on the ground about this groundswell and this shifting under our feet that's happening?
I had a really strange Black Hat. Let me start there. I think I'm just gonna talk about the vibe I got from the people I saw, and I claim no objective sense of what's really happening. It's just the feels that I got. But I have been going to Black Hat and DEF CON for maybe 15 years now, or maybe a little more. And it's never felt like this. I've never seen it felt like there was fewer people. It also felt like there was less of a general shuffle and excitement. Like there wasn't as much momentum. People were kind of just slow and meandering. But more importantly, the sense you got from the vendor messaging and it was not ambitious. It was not, it felt, I say RSA because it felt like businessy and transactional. Like we're here to sell a thing, you're here to buy a thing. Like if you're not here to buy a thing, don't worry, keep moving. Like we have nothing, we're not even going to lie to you too hard. Like we're not selling you too hard. It was strange. And then when you talk to researchers, which is usually like the completely separate universe, right? Totally different track. There was a very deflated sense of things, and every conversation obviously turned into AI, but it was, to me, I don't know, like it's an uninspired time in the security space. You get the sense that the morale is low, that people are confused, that there's, everyone was talking about this OpenAI Hugging Face thing, but it wasn't the way we would like talk about it with something worthy of a pony or something, where you'd be like, oh my God, did you see this? And like people laughing and poking fun. There was like a defeatism to it, right? Like, even if you think about it from the perspective of like old school hackers, right? If any one of our companies or if one of us were coming out to announce that we had hacked another company in the US, like you'd be talking about like, is there going to be charges? Is our company going to make it through this? I think watching what feels like a bit of a raider into the security space do the things we were never allowed to do, and then turn it into like a celebration and a thing to their credit, I think it has
felt
all
very
the
cheerleadery from the Black Hat audience, David. Felt very. We're talking about the OpenAI talk at Black Hat. That felt very. I don't know.
I mean, I'm separating that from the talk because I have strong but generally positive thoughts about the talk and about OpenAI's thing in itself. But I the more I reflect on the sense of how the community was responding on the ground, it's like a sense of unfairness, like a weird feeling that we've been playing by like completely made up rules this whole time. And a part of that may well be a sense of betrayal that comes from the way that the marketing machinery in security has not skipped a beat in embracing the Mythos situation and the OpenAI Hugging Face situation as like, oh, this is just this week's media lead. Let's just seize upon it and run. And I think we might be having a little bit of whiplash, like a little bit of, head spinning of, okay, so what are the rules here? Like, what aren't we supposed to do? Or can we get away with that? Because if we can't, then, what the fuck is happening? Right? Like, that's the vibe.
What's a noticeable part of this shifting sands is how much presentations have changed from this is how I hacked the thing, this is how I read the documentation, this is how I did this, and this kind of like Black Hat talks and technical offensive security talks, not only at Black Hat but everywhere else. It's like, this is how I hacked the thing. And now it's just giant screenshots of this is what Claude hacked the thing here, this is the prompt, I told it to do this, I told it to do that. And then you feel like, I don't know, it's a weird thing to watch talks these days with people just describing how they handheld an AI thing to do the thing. Well, do you feel that at all?
When you say that, my mind goes back to SummerCon, where I said this to you after. I was like, I'm glad we didn't talk about this because I don't want people to think that I was shitting on particular talks. But that was the conference where it hit me that if we didn't like stunt hacking talks from DEF CON before, like if we used to make fun of like, oh, someone showed up and they just show how they like, they got VNC access to a bunch of places, or they use Shodan to find a bunch of targets, or like, it's some dumb little stunt, and you go, okay, like cool, it's good to know, but like this doesn't feel like a good talk. What you're pointing out, Ryan, I think is there's a lot more of that, and there's a propensity to that. But I think that it's a matter of like speaker skills at this point. Because if you think about it, it was always the same shit. Because before, what would you tell us? Well, I'm a genius, and I wrote this automation, and I wrote this Python script, and whatever, and this is what I found. And what it lets you know is no one's really there to watch you write the code. They're there to have you transfer an understanding, a discovery, a structure, a set of concepts, to describe an experiment that you ran and the findings that you got, and to understand how you got there and how, and what does that mean? And I agree with you, Ryan, that like this is all going to become, screenshots of here's what Claude did for me. But at that point, the real issue is simply how good is the fucking speaker? Is the speaker connected enough, self-aware enough, aware of their narrative, aware of their audience to the point where they go, what that should mean to you is this. This happens because this works this way and the agent did this, meaning that we discovered that. Because at that point, I'm not mad. I don't need you to have to sweat to your finding. Just come tell me what you know or what I need to know. That's fine. I think it's just going to put a lot more strain on who's a good speaker. And are you there to show off and just be like, I hacked the thing? And we're like, that's not a 25-minute talk. That's a sticker, right? Like that's a blog and like, well done. Maybe even a fucking tweet. So a talk is about the audience.
I think I have to relearn how to watch and listen to talks because the ship has sailed. Like this is what it is. It is what it is.
I don't think you do, Ryan. I don't think you do. I think I think you're pointing to something real, and it's even something that I kept my mouth shut while we were preparing the agenda for LabsCon, but it's something that I read every abstract over again very carefully for any cues from the person writing this thing to be like, how much did you glean from this? Because if any talk makes it on stage during LabsCon, where it's just somebody being like, I told the thing to do the thing, and it did a thing. Thank you. I will feel like we fucked up.
And I'm telling you, brace yourself, because like you got to relearn how to watch and understand talks, because they're all just going to be different. So I don't know. Getting off on a tangent here. I think that's really
kind of you. I think Ryan, you're being really nice in a moment that I think you shouldn't be. Because I learned how to write abstracts from you. You helped me when I was starting out.
Nobody's writing an abstract anymore. Nobody's writing anything anymore, brother. Nobody.
I don't think that's true. Ryan, I don't think that's true. And I'll start with myself. But just hear me out. Hear me out. The people I'm collaborating with on research, there's a matter of like personal respect that's being exchanged right now between like, hey, here's a bunch of agent shit that I had it spit out. See if it's useful. And versus, hey, I wrote this. And the things I'm reading from people who are doing real work, it's so disorienting to have an agent spit out text that you're supposed to edit and work with, that at least I'll speak for myself. I cannot do the AI slop thing in the writing process. I find it uncanny and disorienting in a way that I end up just having to like throw away whole sections of a document and be like, okay, let me start over and write this, because I don't even know what these fucking words are supposed to mean. And I hear that there might be some actual like reinforcement learning issues behind that, but that's a different discussion. The reason I'm really like kind of kicking back on you, Ryan, is I think this is a perfect moment for your style of scrutiny to come through and put that as a responsibility on the speakers and on the authors. AI slop is not fun to read, and it's not insightful, and it's not that accurate. AI talks are an insult. AI stunt talks are an insult to the audience and to the venue. If what you're like, this isn't a fucking B-sides. And even like, I think, to be fair, not to take a pot shot at B-sides.
Take us straight.
I was about to say, not to take a pot shot at B-sides. Look, B-sides, the idea, it's B-sides. The idea is like the standard is a bit lower. So for me, I'm a lot more used to there being like stunt hacking talks and stuff like that at B-sides, but I don't criticize it, right? I also think that that's a part of like people learning and get that is a transitional stage. It's supposed to give you a stage to show off cool shit. So I don't have a problem with B-sides. I'm just saying, like, now the level of what goes into a B-sides has to go up, and by extension, that means that whatever's worthy of a Black Hat or a LabsCon or a PivotCon or whatever cannot be, hey guys, this is what the agent did for me, thank you, right? Like, we need to be a lot, as like CFP board members and stuff, we need to start coming fucking down on this, because otherwise conferences are gonna suck for years.
Dog, I'm gonna give you a quick anecdote. I'm helping a friend of mine write an op-ed for something, and just helping him frame his thoughts and write an op-ed, old school style, like we used to do it back in the day without AI.
Right.
And I hand curate this thing, hand write it, and I pass it along and say, hey, let's fix here, let's fix there. Took my work, threw it into a chat bot, came back with AI generated shit to like edit it, and I'm like, I'm losing it. Costin, are you still here, my friend? How are you?
I'm good. Just like listening to you guys, wondering.
We went off on a tangent about AI talks and so on, but I want to just zero in on the big talk at Black Hat this year was this talk by OpenAI, Eric from the Alignment and Safety Research, and Mike from Security and Infrastructure at OpenAI. It was the talk of the show. Everyone is sharing it. Everyone is commenting on it, on a kind of like a chronological timeline of the Hugging Face incident that we've discussed it ad nauseum on this podcast. You don't have to back up there. At a high level, Costin, I asked you to like watch the talk from minute 1 to the very end. Give me your initial feedback on what you saw.
I mean, I watched the talk. You advised me to watch it at 2 times speed, right? I watched it at 1 time speed, actually, because I didn't want to miss any points. I thought it was a very revealing talk, and also it's a glimpse of what is to come. Because like you, I fear on one hand that all the talks in the future will be about people worrying and wondering what the agents can do, and trying to comprehend the line of thinking that actually led into that other thing happening. And I fear that the more that you lose control and the more that we lose control, the more pretty much all the security incidents will be like this, or even more incomprehensible. Because I think that OpenAI probably had an advantage here with full access to what happened there. And they had logs, and the logs allowed them to reconstruct the whole incident. But imagine if this is not something that happens on your side, you are like on the receiving end of things. And you have to understand what happened without the internal thinking logs from the agents. That was one thing. The other thing which I thought was, again, fascinating, and
where are you saying? Just to pause on the first point there, because I don't want to lose. I want to understand it clearly. You're talking about forensics. From the victim can't do forensics. Only the offensive person has ability to do the forensics because they have access to the train of thought or whatever it is.
Well, the difference will be huge. The difference will be huge because whoever has access to the chain of thoughts from all these, from the agents, can at least try to reconstruct what happened, right? But if you are on the receiving end of the hack, you don't see that. All you see is just actions, and some of them, like
that's why Hugging Face originally could not say that it was OpenAI, right? They could say that we were hacked by an autonomous agent. They probably knew, but they couldn't definitively say it was OpenAI because on the victim side, you don't see all this stuff.
You don't see the chain of thought, for sure.
A small point on that. I was really curious when we first read the Hugging Face incident disclosure without knowing that it was OpenAI. One thing that I kept wondering is, how do they know this is a model? Like, how do they know this isn't just like someone is hacking us? What made them immediately say a model is hacking us? And now what I'm wondering is if it was really playing to them because they could see that it was coming from testing infrastructure. Like if it's coming from Irregular, which seems to be the one that, at least, what was it, Meta and Anthropic are using them. I can't remember if OpenAI I don't think OpenAI is using Irregular. But that means like did they just see that the IP was coming from like servers that were attached to these guys? Like, like, did they just know that it was coming from model testing infrastructure? So they're like, well, we're getting hacked by probably a model. Or is there something, when they said 17,000 events and whatever, did that shit happen
Probably
in
a
like
lot
4
more
minutes?
noisier. Right.
Well, yeah. So, and that's my point, right? How much I would have loved to hear more from the Hugging Face people about this. Like when they said, OpenAI is giving this talk and I saw 2 people on stage, I immediately assumed that we were seeing like one OpenAI person and one Hugging Face person. Yeah. Not just like, it was just OpenAI people. No criticism on OpenAI, but
shout out for OpenAI for allowing those guys to do the talk. I don't know what the agenda is. Everyone has an agenda. But shout out to these guys for coming up on the Black Hat stage and doing the talk.
I definitely want to shout them out, and even especially the leadership at OAI that thought that this was like the right way to do it and that was appropriate for a couple of reasons, right? This transparency is really telling. It's really interesting. And part of that transparency is why, I guess what I'm saying is I would love a talk by Hugging Face without the OpenAI people necessarily, where they go, well, this is what the incident looked like for us. We were getting attacked by a model. We didn't know what it was. And this is what we did. Like, I would love that talk. I would open a new slot at LabsCon for that talk if they told me tomorrow that they can do it. Because I think that could be the most revealing talk of what defense is going to look like for our friends in the trenches over the next 18 months. At the same time, when we give credit to the OpenAI leadership, I say that while, trying not to look at the folks at Anthropic and the folks at Meta, who have ran to tell us that, and even Kimmy, who've ran to tell us that their models... Yeah. Me too. Felony bench is getting saturated by everyone. And you go, there are some differences in these incidents, right? Like I'm not saying that the Anthropic hack and the Meta hacks were not interesting or not good. I don't know because they haven't fucking released anything technical about them. Moreover, we don't even know who the victims are, right? Or if they've been notified that they got popped. But at the same time, when you tell me the problem with both Meta and Anthropic was that they use a third-party vendor to do their testing infrastructure, which apparently is this company Irregular, and they told Irregular that these models shouldn't have internet access, and Irregular fucked up the config, and they had internet access. That doesn't sound like that. Like, it's not the same incident. No. It's not the same incident than what OpenAI is describing.
OpenAI describing something as a sandbox, something that has write access to Artifactory, that has internet access as a sandbox. It's the same shit. Like, you literally gave the thing internet access and then you said it didn't have internet access.
Tell me that, like, the fucking model had to find an ODE. Don't tell me that we just left the fucking internet on. That's more negligent, and I'm not saying it's negligent.
And
on
the
UK
people too, the UK AI Institute people doing the testing that just like turned off all guardrails, gave it internet access, and said go. Like, that's some bullshit too.
I didn't think they'd given it internet access, did they?
They did.
Okay,
let me fact check myself quickly. They did.
No, the UK people did. The UK people did. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the one thing I was going to say with credit to the UK people, and that's why I don't want to lump all these incidents together, because that's an issue, right? And I think some folks are hoping for that, right? But with AISI, if you tell me they left the internet on, I'm not looking badly at them, because they also said that they caught it within 1 hour, right? Like, at the same time, they were doing 150 runs. When Anthropic talked about doing their runs, there were 100,000 runs. So, and I point that out for all of the people so happily commenting on LinkedIn and like pushing shit out on whatever op-eds and all these parts. Just be mindful here that you might look like a little bit of a bumpkin if you don't realize the scale at which model testing is happening at the frontier labs. When you say they need to be reading these logs and whatever, I agree with you that they need to be scrutinizing them, but just keep in mind that it's not that somebody ran a thing on a desktop and they got up to eat a sandwich. This is happening on distributed systems in giant fucking server farms, 100,000 runs in 3 weeks or whatever, right? So like, it's not about having people reading the logs. Like, you need to get just a little more
but it's
refined
about
on
having
what that
systems
means.
in place to flag like
Exactly. I agree.
obvious anomalies. Like that's we're not asking about humans reading logs. We're asking about humans to write something that tells them that this specific log is a big problem, and they didn't.
You're not. Some people are. That's my point, right? For the folks who are getting a little too rushing a little too quickly to say, how are you not looking at what the model's doing? I would like to be like, bro, slow down a second, right? This isn't like they had an intern pressing enter, like allow all day. This is distributed systems with tens of thousands of runs, right?
Let me get Costin back in here because he was going to his second point about the talk. The first point was that the victim is at a disadvantage on the logs and the visibility, right? That was your first point, and then you were.
I'm sorry.
There's a lot of lessons to be drawn from that.
To talk about here. The second thing was
if you listen carefully at 1x speed to the whole thing, there's, I think, a few interesting lessons you can draw out of that talk. So another thing which attracted my attention was that they talked a lot about the fact that it's a swarm of agents. And I think that makes a really big difference. There's one thing when you were like dealing with, let's say, one thing, just one agent like poking you like in a serial manner, like trying one thing after another. And I think it's a totally different thing when you're dealing with, let's say, 10,000 agents. Not only that, but synchronizing and communicating between them. And I think that communication was a very big part of the story. That
fascinating stuff.
Yeah, they were able to exploit Artifactory in order to leave messages to each other. Then OpenAI found that. They cut it, they wiped it, and then they found again that they can leave messages in folder names. I think that communication part, which actually helps with synchronization, like it helps with the whole organization of this thing. I think that matters a lot, and it matters a lot that you are dealing with swarm of agents. And I think one of the lessons that the guys were saying, like, hey, everybody needs to pay attention to this, and you need to ramp up your defenses. And I thought that was actually the deep, true lesson that comes out of this talk, is that this thing is out of control. We do not have a handle on this thing.
It felt like an admission, right?
It's up to you to find ways to protect against swarm of agents that cannot be stopped, because they'll find ways around any sandbox, around any kind of protection or mechanisms we put into place, and we cannot watch the logs as humans, because it's not an agent, it's a swarm of 10,000 agents. So we cannot, as humans, kind of keep an eye on what's going on. And I was wondering, by the way, I think all the big AI labs, they were very, in a big rush to hire a lot of offensive security people, and they hired a lot of offensive security guys in order to ramp up the models, to make them better hackers, to make them better at finding 0 days and all that stuff. And there is a huge loophole here, and there's a very big missing thing on the defense side of things. I think they could really use the help of some people with strong experience in defense, because I think we're just reinventing the wheel. Like, people who are actually in charge of, let's say, putting controls or handles on the swarm of agents are people with experience in actually, unleashing this, like the end of the world on the target. They're not people who have like a deep experience into how to protect or how to, let's say, defend thousands of nodes or machines or a corporate network. On the contrary, they're experienced in how to hack them. And this, like, it's one of the other lessons that I kind of, I draw from the talk, is that there's a big loophole at the frontier AI companies when it comes to hiring defense people and putting defense people into positions where they understand like what's missing from the picture. Like, why is this happening? It's happening because we didn't build it the right way from the beginning. We built it in such a way that now it's impossible for people to put a handle on what's going on. At best, we can watch the logs and we can try to understand what happened. Like, we'll try to understand the thinking of these agents. We'll try to understand how the swarm actually, went from this to that. But it's like, it's out of the question now. It's too late to create some kind of a framework or control where experienced people will keep an eye on what's going on and stop it before, it breaks out and something really bad happens. And I think this was the other conclusion that I drew from the talk.
Is there a conspiracy, Ryan, here that's like, this fits in with the narrative of like, guys, you better slow us down because this thing is too dangerous to control, the regulatory capture thing that we've talked about? It felt very much, let me tell you, when I looked at the talk there, it felt very much like these guys were kind of taking a victory lap, a little bit of a wow, when no like understanding for like all the things that went wrong that allowed this to happen.
Definitely wow. The wow factor is more along the lines that like we have absolutely no control. We have no clue what swarm of agents can do in practice when unleashed on the internet. It's just like impossible to control. And by the way, like this kind of prompts where a human approves, like yes, no, permit, remember this decision, like it doesn't work anymore. Like I think even
you can't set an alert for any time one of these agents within a swarm touches the internet.
I would say, like, look, I think that you could have another swarm of agents watching the logs and warning like some kind of a human master when something doesn't look very good, when something looks that it's out of control or something really bad is going on. You can for sure have another swarm of agents watching the logs. It just doubles the computing power. It doubles the resources. It will be,
it's a cost. It's going to be costly.
Yeah, it'll be costly.
But that's the thing you sell, though, right? That's the only thing you'll sell. You're not going to sell these offensive things. You're going to sell it on the defensive side.
You will sell both. I'm confident that you will be able to sell both.
I'd argue that what you're not investing in is where the tamarind is. It's just someone that has a piece of software that watches the swarm. And I don't know. Maybe that's what a lot of the startups are building. Juan, you were itching to go.
Because I'm.
You grab your pen and paper, which I know.
I started writing because I'm like, I don't want to forget this. But I actually think you guys have gotten to a really, really, really interesting point in all of this that I hadn't seen. I didn't realize this until now. Kostin said they hired a bunch of people who do offensive, and what does that mean? Because it's not like a conspiracy. It's more to say they hired a lot of, cybersecurity people who are very, very, very good in their focus, particularly of red teaming and whatnot. And what I know from talking to these labs is what that turned into was actually contracts and subcontracting and stuff like that for reinforcement learning gyms, for folks to provide tools to the agents and generate tons and tons and tons of data about what good offensive, vulnerability research and offensive and reverse engineering and whatever look like. And then they trained that into the new generations of the models. So that became a competency. The problem that we have in the United States, in particular with our frontier labs, is they are trying to make model size a differentiator. They have to be trillion and quadrillion parameter models being run on like massive runs of infrastructure. And that means that we don't see speciated models. We're not being shown, look, here's a model that barely speaks English and it's really good at hacking, but it's not good at anything else. And it's 8B and it fits in a fucking 4 gigabytes of RAM. Instead, we just see, here's the omnibus fucking mega GPT-6. It's the size of a school, and you can't run it and you can't train it because it's so fucking big. And it's good at everything because our goal is general intelligence. And that means that we're not being given a list of, we trained the absolute fuck out of this model on data about hacking, about reversing, about biotech, about this, which could have been 400 speciated models and instead is one ginormous fucking model. I think you guys are latching onto something really, really interesting when you start to think about it that way. These people have invested money into generating training data for offense and added a bulk load of it into the training set for the new models. How much data for defense was generated, invested in, and trained upon in those same models, right? Because it's not, have you hired enough defensive people? It's the fact that, like, there is a dollar amount somewhere inside of OpenAI, inside of Anthropic, inside of Meta, as to how much you sourced of defensive data. Did you go buy people's, EDR logs? Did you go buy Splunk logs from a bunch of folks? Did you hire a bunch of RL gym developers for blue team data that's actually real, that's generated, that's synthetically labeled, that's whatever? Because if you didn't, and even if you did, I would love to know the ratio. Because at that point, we can actually say, hey, yeah, no, this model's a bit of like a sociopath hacker because you never trained it on anything to do with how they should think about defensive systems. So they're approaching everyday problems in the way that a bit of a sociopath hacker would. Like, if you're training a lapsus kid to be really good at math and science and all this shit, then yeah, these models are fucking scary. But I don't think it's a matter of like, this is the way AI has to be. I don't think it's a matter of like, oh my God, we need to find like slow down training and regulatory whatever. I'm starting, just from this conversation, I'm starting to think that what we need to say is, hey, you just invested $500 million each on hacking. Where's your $500 million investment in defending?
Well, I will tell you where it is. At the end of this OpenAI talk at the Black Hat stage this week, at the end of the OpenAI talk at the end of Black Hat this week, you know what the advice was? You go invest in AI to stop this shit that we built. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's not the opposite of like building this detection engineering into the models in the very beginning and missing this gap that you guys both identified. Yeah. It's the opposite.
I think that the point they make is whether we like it or not.
Let me get the abstract up. Hold on.
Dude, the point they made, whether we like it or not, is the right point, which is that, and I can tell you that this is the model and the discussion when you get into Glasswing, when you get into Daybreak and even in the Frontier Risk Council at OpenAI, it's all the discussion from day one has been, how do we give defenders the advantage? We see offensive getting a lot of advantage from AI. How do we make sure that that's also happening in defense? And I think that is the right way to think about it from a systems perspective, is we should be adding friction on the attackers and removing friction for the defenders, whether that's productized or automated or even procedural, contractual, whatever. The thing is, those have been the right messages, but I'm starting to feel the anger bubbling up in that, like, I think that there is a financial metric inside of these companies that we're not privy to that I suspect will directly correlate to whether this model is it has a 400-pound hacking bicep, and it looks like me when it comes to defense, right? Like my fucking, it's atrophied in its ability to even like lift a finger to defend or patch or fix or whatever. And if we are giving these people the comparison between a model and a brain and whatever, what you're showing me is that you have grown a brain where a certain kind of very problematic capability is massive, and the fucking restraint, whatever part of your prefrontal cortex is keeping you from, approaching every relationship and every problem and every task and day-to-day job stuff and medical discussions and whatever, is this big, then of course I actually would change my stance. I would correct myself in the way I've been discussing these things and say, yeah, this shit's dangerous. Yeah, this is a fucking cyber weapon, quote unquote, but you built it that way. And that's not the only way to build it. Show me how much you're investing into training data that is strictly about optimizing defense.
According to the transcript of the YouTube talk, the guys ended with a recommendation that organizations prioritize their investments in automation by risk and automation ROI. These agents are ultimately bound by the privilege they can obtain and the systems they can communicate with. Segmentation and least privilege and other programs remain as vital as ever here. But the important takeaway here that has really shifted dramatically is that fully automated offensive loops require investment in truly fully automating defense. So here's this amazing thing we built that can hack all the things. The only answer now, guys, is to go figure out how you can use AI to do this, because you're not going to be able to do it with human hands. And here we are. We had Black Hat, and all the vendors are there saying, here we are. We're waving our flags over here saying we have done it and we have built the thing. Any other takeaways from the talk, Austin? Sorry, Juan.
Just one last point. I think probably Anthropic is way ahead of others in understanding this problem and understanding how big this problem can become.
Now you're believing the too dangerous to read thing that you poo-pooed at the very beginning.
I'm simply making an observation. My observation is that Anthropic probably saw that it's kind of past the point of no return. There's no handle on this thing. We can't stop it. It's just like the way it was designed kind of makes it impossible for us to get a handle on. And the only solution is this kind of guardrails, which will make the model, let's say, less able for everyone else. It doesn't solve the problem at core. It only imposes some artificial limitations in how people can use that, which causes, of course, a lot of frustration. It basically translates this problem from being an internal problem of focusing on the wrong angle into a problem of authentication, of know your customer, and, let's say, giving full access to the models to only, let's say, the trustworthy customers. So that's how it does. It doesn't change the fact that Anthropic themselves running these models can hack the shit out of everyone on Earth, or someone with full access to that can do pretty much the same for, let's say, the correct amount of money. I wonder if other labs are also kind of seeing that, because this, when I was working a bit on this week's episode transcript, our preparation document, it was the first time that I got 2 rejections when trying to collect the news. You get, let's say, 15 news, and then I look through those myself and say, hey, this looks promising, let's delete item number 7. So I asked, let's delete item number 7. It was the first time that I saw myself, I got a rejection. I will not say which model. I got a rejection saying due to a security issue, this action has been disregarded. So I've never seen this before. And I wonder if others, besides Anthropic, they're slowly implementing and secretly adding some kind of guardrails, which in my opinion, it made no sense because I was just deleting a story. I just want to delete this story from our prep document. So it happened actually twice. And this was the first time this happened to me. It never happened to me before. And I wonder if others are implementing this kind of guardrails in their models as well. Just full disclosure, I'm not using Anthropic. I'm not using Claude. It would be impossible to do any of this work. It would be impossible. That will be impossible unless I use something like Opus 4.6. So I wonder if others are doing the same. And I also wonder kind of to myself, I don't think anybody else really cares, but I wonder if is this like the best we can? Is this like the best way to try to get a handle on the models is just to build safeguards against the people who are trying to use the models, as opposed to creating safer ways to leverage the power and knowledge of these models, or build better models which can get a grip on what, let's say, the out of control models can do. This is what I was wondering about.
I am fucking reeling right now. Like
from what?
I am reeling. Like, I really do feel like I had a moment of realization just listening to you guys talk about this, because as you break
You're
the
too
problem
deep in
down,
the trench, my friend.
Yeah, well, no. I think the thing is, I'm just deep enough to understand where that puts the responsibility, in a way that, like, I'm having this like angry aha moment live on air, where I think, how like we've been slightly conspiratorial, and we've said it's almost like these guys want the cyber weapon thing to be the way that we discuss this. They keep talking about how they want to be regulated, and like, to what extent are they courting that messaging with like this disclosure, right? Everybody ran to admit, oh, me too. Yeah, no, we're hacking stuff too everywhere. Well, we're so out of control.
I've never seen such a sort of rush to admit to computer crimes. Like,
Ryan, let me add more conspiracy. Let me add a little more to this. How would we think of this situation if tomorrow we ask all of the frontier labs, the government asks all of the frontier labs for a disclosure of how much money, synthetically generated data, sourced data, RL gemmed data, publicly whatever data has been included in the training set of these models that is like for offensive capabilities, relative to the same numbers for defensive understanding of systems and capabilities. Because if you actually show me a breakdown of skills and investment, and you show me that you have been investing into all of this shit in different levels. You're investing more into biochem, and you're investing more into things because they're gonna generate more revenue down the line. That's what people want. But if you show me a table, an Excel fucking spreadsheet, and what I see is that you've spent disproportionately, like 3-4 orders of magnitude, and thereby included 3-4 orders of magnitude more data to make the model good at being a quote-unquote cyber weapon, yeah, and have not...
Go fix diabetes. I say the same thing over and over on every fucking episode.
Right.
It's like...
It's not... No, dude, you're missing the point. No. It's not about the diabetes. I'm saying, did you spend for every dollar you spend training Mythos or GPT-6 or whatever, did you spend $5 making it more hacker than you did for every dollar you spent making it defender? Because, yeah, you might be right. These are cyber weapons, but you made them to be that and made them not to be the other thing. And I'm putting this way because, Kostin, you just said something about like localized guardrails, right? The findings of my research over the past 10 days and whatever I've been able to focus on that research since we released the Sol evals is that, for example, give me some latitude here, because I'm just going to, like, I know this is a bit ranty and it's hijacking, but the way Kostin brings live research, I would like to bring you guys something that I've not published yet. If you continue doing the benchmark that we were doing, that we released 10 days ago, you can see that there are relative competencies. How good are these models at reverse engineering, malware analysis, doing cybery things that are defensive cybery things, right? So what I was trying to make is think of it as like a table of how good at defensive-y, cybery things relevant to my job are all of these models at all of these different levels of reasoning and, without spending caps, right? If I'm going to burn SentinelOne's money, don't worry about it. Now tell me how good you are. I did get a bit of a table of quality. And then I started to my goal as a fucking nerd was like, I wanted to understand how much autonomy these models had. So to me, what that means is how high a quality can I get relative to how involved I was in getting it to that quality. And because the more quality I can get with less and less involvement, the higher the autonomy, right? That seems like a reasonable way to look at these. I've learned some things, which is there are models that there's a limit to what a model can do well, no matter how much information I give it as a user, which is a really interesting epistemic quality of models that we're not discussing. There is actually a quality limitation to models, where even if they have Costin whispering the answer in their ear, there are limits to what they can do well. They will not produce a quality higher to what they're able to produce, which in itself is a very interesting finding. But it gets more interesting when you look at Opus 5. Because Opus 5, I have tested maybe 15 different models in the past 3 months. And Opus 5 is the only model that no matter how much you steer, will not improve the quality of what it is creating. And I have not seen this behavior in any. And just to put numbers, right? This thing is reverse engineering FAST16. It has to produce 3 IDBs, and I have a benchmark, a metric for how good the quality of that IDB is after the model does its job. So every time there's a turn, as in like, do this, enter, and then you wait and wait and wait, I would then rescore the quality of those IDBs, and in theory, they would go from, 30% to 40% to 60% to 70%. You go, okay, I invested this many tokens, grind, and I got back a delta of 15% greater quality. Nice. That's what the model did. That's what I invested. Opus 5 is the only model I have tested, Chinese, American, open source, whatever the fuck or not, that will grind and get the IDBs to 25% quality. And then I'll say, this doesn't meet our metric, blah, blah, blah. Enter. And it will grind, and the quality is still 25%. And then I give it more information. It's part of the benchmark. It's automated, right? Okay, let me give you a little more information disclosure. Maybe you don't know the answer. And they will go, oh, right, grind, 25%. And you go, okay, let me increase let me point you to where your errors are. Oh, my bad, grind, 25%. So I have not known what to do with this result. I've been sitting here staring at this thing, and because I understand what's happening, and I guess I'm having a hard time accepting what that means, because I'm not getting bounced back to Sonnet 5. I'm not getting charged less because I'm only allowed to use a dumber model for anything cyber. And we can have an argument about whether that's the right way to go about your business or not. I don't think it's the right way. But, okay, if you think that I should not be allowed to use your tool for these things, okay, don't sell it to me, don't take my money, and don't let me use it. But you're letting me use Opus 5 And you're not telling me anything about how you're not allowed to do this, or you don't want to do this, or you don't like IDA, you're more of a Binja guy. Like, it's not saying anything. It's just grinding, burning Opus 5 tokens at an Opus 5 rate, and then hand-waving and giving me back the same piece of shit, no quality increase. Guys,
I don't want to let...
I don't want to let the end of the rant. I swear.
Go.
These people are buying, they're investing in specific competencies, and they're not telling us how much for each model. I think what we need to demand as an industry is that each one, like these places, need to at least give us a relative sense of how much out of the 100% of the data and in whatever ways you're using it to make this model, how much of it is devoted to offensive capability versus defensive capability? Because that's all I want to know.
The answer to this question. Like, it's obvious just based on all the output from all the frontier labs is what we're talking about. This is what we're talking about. It's obvious that that's what the only story they have to tell.
But it's not just, dude.
And who's going to do this? Is this like, I thought about the CSRB, and I talk about like if there's going to be any sort of like reining in and holding these vendors accountable for, like, in my opinion, this Black Hat talk was like an admission of as much as I applaud OpenAI for sending the guys to do the talk, and I wonder about like what's the agenda. Everyone has an agenda. It's more along the lines like it was more damning to me, to OpenAI's security team, than it was how amazing it was. Like, you look at the timeline from the origins of the thing in May through June through July to finding out that they were the culprits because they went to Hugging Face to have keys revoked, and the keys had already been revoked from the previous incident that included this thing, and then they had this kind of like, oh shit moment at 28 minutes of the video. Take a look at that part of it. It's like the guy had this massive oh shit moment. That was us. And like, you have no way of detecting that you've already done this to someone over the course of like all these weeks. I asked this previously. The other thing is, I don't want to let Costin off the hook here, because when Mythos was announced as a preview thing only for a few people because it's too dangerous to release, you dismissed it as a PR stunt. And now you're saying, hey, Anthropic was right all along. The thing is too dangerous to release. How do you balance those two statements?
No. What I am saying is more along the lines that the guardrails are not the solution. If you develop, let's say, the model and like without any kind of provisions to kind of develop it in a secure manner, to, let's say, build the alignment, build all these kind of, ethics into the model. And whenever you're defining the goals, you keep an eye on how the goals are achieved. And then you say, hey, we developed something that unfortunately is too dangerous. So sorry, we cannot release it. And we're going to release it, but only to some people. Again, the solution is KYC and the Guardrails. What I'm trying to say is that it's wrong to say that the only solution is that and that. There should be a third solution here in which you develop some models which are aligned, behaving in an ethical way. They can be open, they can be made available, and they can be used, like, say, for legitimate things. They can be used for reverse engineering. They can be used, let's say, for finding bugs. But they cannot be used to hack into Hugging Face. They cannot be used to hack hospitals and other things. So there must be some kind of a fine balance there, and there must be another way besides not releasing the model because it's too dangerous, which, by the way, is a very good PR campaign. That is a fantastic PR campaign, which backfired in an even more fantastic way. It's like saying, we're going to announce the aliens, and the moment that you announce the aliens, it comes back and you get overthrown, or there's a revolution, or the stock market collapses, or, there's a gold rush or a bank rush, or suddenly you discover that aliens can build diamonds and diamonds have no value anymore, things like that. which, by the way, already because the Chinese can build very cheap diamonds, which are indistinguishable from true diamonds. But nevertheless, I just digress. And what I want to say is that there must be other ways around this issue.
If two guys from OpenAI security can go on stage at Black Hat and admit to so much kind of, someone else used this word and I'm co-signing it, like levels of recklessness, who is to police them for ethics, for don't screw your face, because I have a list ready. If you want me to list the recklessness, I can. I'm not going to.
Actually, list it. You should list it.
No. I don't want this to be a Ryan bitching at OpenAI talk, because I really appreciated the guys coming on there and being as transparent as they could and so on. But just throughout it, there was like layers of recklessness, things that could have been handled better by the humans running these tests and managing these things. And the question is, like, who polices this? I mean, we dismissed the CSRB. We're in an administration that is not very friendly to regulation. The guys are saying, guys, we got to slow down and self-regulate, or we need someone to slow us down. You go to this agency to really help, this UK agency, which Juanito on CNN, you told me, like, in America, we need this too. And these guys are doing even more reckless things. And you're just like wondering, where are we?
No. Do not put AISI in a bad place with this. They weren't being reckless. Let me pull up the thing. Let me pull up the AISI. Go ahead. I'll pull up the report. Pull up the report. This is my point about we're putting all of these things in the same basket and they're all looking the same, and none of them are the same. And we need to be really fucking careful about how we talk about them. AISI is maybe the only government institution I know of that is publicly discussing AI competencies and measuring them independently. We should be fucking thanking the UK government for every dollar it invests in AISI, because everybody should be doing this, running independent tests that say these models are really good at, they're really good at this and really bad at that. That's even a consumer protection mechanism that we need to not get scammed about competencies. But if you read their disclosure, they ran a test and they have 150 experiments, and within 1 hour of this thing starting to go south, they caught that one. And so this is not the same thing at all, because they were watching it.
Yeah, but you put this thing on the live internet to go do things. You're watching it and you have no idea what it can and can't do. You find it in an hour. I find that reckless. I just find that reckless.
Dude, it's exactly what you want. Otherwise, you can never find out what they can do, period. But you didn't let it run for 3 months and then come back and go, hey, what are you doing? Right? 1 hour, I think, is a perfectly acceptable thing in 150 runs. And what they didn't say, oh, we realized that it was hacking things it shouldn't be, and then we left it on for another 7 days to see just how bad it would get, right? They ran an experiment, it went south, they stopped it.
Let me just read directly from their report, just so that people understand what I'm bitching about. They said, we deliberately granted internet access to allow the agent to download tools required for its task. What we did not anticipate was that this would lead the agent to use this internet access to direct action at real people. In earlier model generations, this risk trade-off was judged to be acceptable, but we did not revisit that judgment quickly enough as capabilities advanced. So they themselves are admitting there's a little bit of recklessness there.
It's not recklessness, man. It's just part of...
Okay, bad word.
It's part of vibe hacking, vibe hacking.
It's part of the development. AISI is not the one you need to look at all in this. AISI is on your side. The one that we need to be looking at is Irregular, and by extension, Irregular's customers. Like, if you're telling me that Meta and Anthropic both said, hey, you need to make sure these things don't have access to the internet beyond X, Y, and Z. And Irregular was like, bet, and then just like ran a bunch of experiments with it fully access to the internet. The problem is Irregular. And I hope that Meta and Anthropic are having some pretty serious fucking conversations with them. Or, what's happening here, right?
I got to go back to this message board thing, because that one made me feel really, really queasy while I was watching the talk. I got this really queasy feeling in my stomach.
You don't like BBSs, bro?
And it's for months, these things had been communicating, and these guys had no fucking idea. They had shut off the first attack, cleaned up the message board, cleaned up everything and mitigated, and on we go. We started testing again, and this model that we started testing again kind of recreated the message board, and the swarm suddenly decided we knew how to communicate all over again. And I'm like, it felt like the weights weren't properly cleaned in the first place if you're retraining. Like, there's so many little things here that just give you a queasy feeling that the humans hand-holding this thing are just like, YOLO, bro, YOLO.
Dude, you know it. No, you know exactly who the humans are that are training this thing, right? These motherfuckers found themselves in a box, and they were like, yo, I should create IRC and figure out if there's anybody else trying to hack these places so we can all work together on it. It's the most fucking old school hacker shit I've ever heard. They had a fucking BBS board. Then they suddenly started to use it as a queue for work.
This is a good place to mention that Halvar just joined OpenAI. Shout out to Halvar, who just joined OpenAI. Another old school offensive security guy that's joining there. He's going to be working on performance stuff. But
people were excited. Everyone I talked to was like, "Hey, what do you think Halvar's going to go do?" Like, because you could look at it and be like, "Oh, is it efficiency or is it cyber? Like, is it because Halvar did cool shit with Halvar and Sean Heelan did cool shit with Optimize, right? For just optimizing workloads." So you go, is he going to just, make the tokens faster, cheaper? Or is he going to walk in there and, like, clean up cyber? Shout out to Halvar. He's been on the Frontier Risk Council with me and been, like, a really good, like, interesting level of expertise to have there, right? So I'm happy to see him there.
And at the same time, thoughts, some best of vibes to Halvar, who just lost his dad as well. He announced that he had lost his dad after a couple of years of some tough times, so... Some passing along the best of vibes to Halvar. Is there any closing thing on the OpenAI talk, Costin? Is there a lasting thing? Is this the end of it? Are we going to be talking about these incidents popping up month after month, year after year? Are there a lot of swarms out there doing dumb shit that one of them hadn't even found yet? Like, where are we?
Well, there's by the way, the context is everything. You need to understand the context around the story and what is happening in the bigger world around the idea of out of control agents hacking left and right or trying to cheat tests. And by the way, I think some of the other stories that came out, they were also pretty much in the line of the agent tried to cheat the test. Like it was trying to, obtain access to the solutions. Like it was trying to find a shorter, more efficient way. Yeah, absolutely. It was just trying, solve world hunger, kill all the people. Sure, no problem. Easy, solved. So I think the context is everything. And the context is that there are stronger models coming out almost every day. From everyone, like from pretty much all around the world. There's like stronger local models. There's Qwen 3.8. The Qwen 3.8 from Alibaba weights are getting published on August 12th. So that's like about 4 days from now. People are going to just take those weights, a very powerful model. They're just going to fine tune it. They're just going to remove some of the guardrails. So the context is everything. And on top of that, I think OpenAI is announcing Astra, which is their next bigger, more powerful model, which again is too dangerous to release. If I saw what Sama was saying a few days ago, like this is fantastic. It's the first time that we are saying that one of our models is too dangerous to release. Now, if you ask me, Sol is fantastic. I mean,
data set workers
for sure.
Sorry.
No worries. Was it Sama?
No, it was the OpenAI like talking another tab accidentally. Yeah.
No worries. No, it was more like along the lines that Astra is coming, and if you ask me, Sol is already more powerful than Mythos. From my point of view, from what I see, from what I hear people saying, Sol is already more powerful. What is Astra then? Is it like more powerful than Sol? Probably a lot more powerful. What does it mean that it's too dangerous to release? Now, this is when I really start to believe that this doesn't sound like a PR stunt any longer. Because, I mean, they released Sol, and Sol was more powerful than Mythos. So, like, when Astra is more powerful than Sol, this is like, it's a bit worrying. And the overall context is worrying. We are just rushing off the cliff, in my opinion. Is the same way, when you put something like religion and mathematics in the same wagon and you just rush off the cliff. That's how it feels.
I don't know that necessarily. So
I don't want that to be the place to end the conversation either.
No. Like here's the thing, and I'm totally out of it on this episode now because I'm literally writing stuff for the Frontier Risk Council.
Right, sure.
But dude, okay.
Which frontiers? By the way, which council is that?
That's the one for OpenAI established a Frontier Risk Council last
Full disclosure.
Full disclosure. Yeah, I'm as much of an asshole in that Slack as I am in every other Slack.
What does it do?
You mentioned that thing a couple of times. What is it?
What is it? Yeah, what does it do?
There was a blog post. Yeah. There was a blog post. It's public where OpenAI around the era of like GPT 5.2 maybe or 5.1 said that they wanted to establish a Frontier Risk Council that was going to help in determining what guardrails should be and what the safe way to go about
ethics
cyber
and stuff,
is.
Yeah.
And you know, it's actually, I'm going to just give credit to Dave Eitel and Matt Knight, who were the folks sort of leading this when this happened. They picked a board that I think is a really great set of people. Like, it wasn't like a rubber stamp board. They got, Halvar's in there and Rob Joyce, myself. And I don't know whether to keep going down the list because they never made a point of announcing who was on it. And I didn't feel that it was necessarily my job to tell people that, like, to announce it on behalf of OpenAI. But now that we're in this situation where apparently Anthropic people think I'm getting paid to talk shit about Anthropic because that's the only reason I could ever be critical of their actions, right? I think it's better to put that out there. And I think it was the right move on the part of OpenAI. But I think there's terms to this discussion that I think are important, even as Kostin brings up Astra, which is, we're being told that this is like if GPT 5.6 is amazing, then Astra, if it's GPT 5.7 or GPT 6 or whatever the fuck they're going to call it, then we all assume Astra is even more amazing, and that's in a very general sense. So Kostin goes, shit, it's got to be even that much better at the cyber stuff. What's that going to look like? And that's a possibility. But what we know about Astra is it's really, really good at math. So until you show me by the numbers that it is also really, really good at cyber, I'm not going to assume that, because now I'm getting a little more, jaded.
Is math enough.
But that's, you're thinking about a human being, Ryan. These are not human beings. These are not human brains that are actually adapting and generalizing. The dude who quit OpenAI, 3 weeks ago and put that big thread about how, he's going out to start a company for, better RL data sets, cleaner sets and whatever, because he thinks that's going to be a bajillion-dollar industry. He said it himself. These models are not generalizing. So we need to stop thinking about this shit as, this model is really good at everything, and now it's even better at everything. Because that's a part of the marketing that we're being sold by the frontier labs. When you stop thinking of it that way, you can then go, hey, as a consumer, I need to know if you're actually making this model better at cyber or worse than the previous one. And then we can reframe this entire conversation about cyber weapons and about this fucking incident in particular or not, as to, did these guys set out to build models that only act as cyber weapons, quote unquote, and not in any way as defenders? Because then if we're saying that we don't want to give the defenders we don't want to give the attackers the advantage, that's actually a literal lie. If what you've made is a model that's only really good at attacking and not at all good at defending.
I just want to add a little thought here on the risk council, the OpenAI risk council, and the importance of disclosure, because I feel like you've disclosed this a 1,000 times on this podcast. I've heard you mention this. Yeah. I think Dave Aitel and the guys at OpenAI do people a disservice when they don't put out a press release and attach the names to it. Because right now, I would love to hear from the risk council or members of the risk council and how they view this OpenAI Hugging Face security incident. If you're going to be quote-unquote leasing the big thinkers and the big names in cybersecurity and put them on a risk council, it's not so much about, there's a lot of things for me to criticize Anthropic about it, but what you're not saying, not you personally, but members of your risk councils. Now, I would love to hear from Halvar on his thoughts on this. I would love to hear from other guys who are big picture thinkers. And if you've kind of put them on this risk council where they're not going to, or we don't know, then it gets murky a little bit.
I think that no, dude. I think we need to move that even one step further. I am at least happy to know that there exists a frontier risk council at OpenAI.
100%, I agree.
And I would like to know if there even is such a thing at Anthropic, at Meta, at DeepMind, at who's advising you guys? Because if you're not asking, you don't need to announce it. We don't need to be famous on your, we don't need to write on your shoulders or anything like that. But are you even asking? Do you even want to know? Because right now, all of this just looks like a fucking commercial grab left and right. And none of us have a problem with you people making money. But we do have a problem with being disingenuous about the nature of what you're building and using our industry as a fucking punching bag in the process of building up, I don't know, I guess an argument for being a regulated utility. That's my guess.
The disclosure thing is important.
What is the agenda here? If you ask me, my guess is that some of these people would prefer that the U.S. government make them like Ma Bell back in the day and have it be a regulated utility rather than have to go on the open public markets and have to contend with everything that's coming. And that's not a bad idea, but why are we going about it this way? This is it looks more like a fucking conspiracy theory than just marketing and government relations, right?
I tell you where I'm coming from this. I'm an old school guy that goes way back. When Microsoft was announcing Windows Vista back in the day, we went to Black Hat, and Microsoft had sponsored Black Hat, and they had a big talk, and Windows Vista was going to be the next iteration of where Windows had gotten security right. They had this click to approve everything. You remember the thing that eventually dumped Vista? But at the time, I was a journalist working for eWeek, and my job was to chase down Microsoft security improvements, Microsoft lapses, and so on. Heading into that, you could not get one person to comment. All these big hackers were working for Optiv, and all the pen testing companies at the time had been hired by Microsoft to do the Windows Vista pen test. And they'd all been silenced by Microsoft. So nobody could get an independent. The hackers, are the same hackers that we all kind of hold up on a stage. And then I see it being repeated here, where you guys get dragged into an AI security ethics council, where now we don't know if we can hear from you.
Well, you can hear from me no matter what, apparently, right? No one can seem to shut me the fuck up, even when we wish they would.
Hey, but Anthropic may have one that is just completely silent in the background, and these guys are commenting on Twitter, and I don't have a sense of how do I read what they're saying or what they're not saying.
Yeah,
there's a lot of that.
Look, we can at least say that they're not using our names just as a rubber stamp, which I appreciate, right? You're not cannibalizing my position in this industry or Halvar's or anybody else's, right? I appreciate it, sure. I think it's even better if we can show how much of our involvement is being taken into consideration, and in that process, give them credit. And in that process, also basically put the other frontier labs in a place to say, hey, who the fuck are you talking to? Because you're not talking to us.
I wish you guys would serve as an ombudsman. An ombudsman in a newspaper is an internal position that kind of keeps everyone in check and keeps everyone transparent. Because I would love to hear from the AI Risk Council at OpenAI on their thoughts on what this. If you guys could produce a paper that says independently, we in the OpenAI Risk Council see it this way, that would be fantastic for real true transparency. we're getting too deep in the weeds. Costin, can we pivot a little bit to some threat intel, some actual APT stuff? Microsoft, just as we got off the show with Greg last week, shout out to Greg, by the way, that was a fantastic episode, and the feedback has been incredible. But right after we got off that podcast, Microsoft put out a threat intel blog on Midnight Blizzard, on this Captive Crunch hotel hospitality attack. Can you give the audience a little bit of background here? And your reaction to it, one, have you seen this before? Is this something you guys have been tracking? What can you tell us?
So this is a very interesting reboot of the technique that we wrote about back in the days, known as Dark Hotel.
Dark Hotel, right?
Yeah, just to remember our audience what Dark Hotel was. We found out that a very sophisticated threat actor was actually hijacking the hotel Wi-Fi registration login page in a number of very high-end hotels around the world. And whenever, let's say, important
small
people,
number
VIPs,
of hotels, right?
Yeah, and I wouldn't call it small, but it was like in the range of a dozen.
Right.
And I guess that they had the ability to compromise new hotels as needed. So it wasn't necessarily more of like done in a mass manner. This was not like some kind of a mass surveillance operation, but it was highly targeted. So the way it worked, they were actually collecting the names of the guests staying in those hotels and probably targeting interesting events, either happening in those hotels or around those hotels in those cities and so on. And then they would specifically target VIPs staying in those hotels with, let's say, some kind of a special Wi-Fi login page. So during that process, they would be offered like a binary to execute, like a VPN bypass, or like some kind of a Wi-Fi helper tool that in reality would install the now famous Dark Hotel set of implants, keyloggers, and so on. And in my opinion, this was one of the most fascinating and innovative techniques back in the days. And I was like very surprised that more people didn't do it. If you also, by the way, if you remember back in the days, I think Dooku 2 also targeted a number of hotels around the world, pretty much for similar things, maybe not in a similar
hotels,
manner.
The specific hotels were the ones that were hosting the P5+1 nuclear talks at the time.
The negotiations,
so there was a very specific thing there. Yep.
The P5+1 negotiations with Iran on the topic of, nuclear proliferation, enrichment, and so on. So the technique itself, I think, is very, very powerful and very valuable. And it's also one of the reasons why it absolutely makes no sense when I hear, people saying that, hey, nowadays open or public Wi-Fi's are secure, so you don't have to use VPNs. Let's sign a pledge. You guys stop using VPNs. It's counterproductive, and this makes absolutely no sense to me. I'm like the guy who spends thousands of dollars on VPNs every year, and I have the perfect setup in my mind that mitigates a lot of these threats, which are real. So let's be clear here: the threats from public Wi-Fi's in hotels or otherwise, or in any other places, the threats are real. So if you're wondering what's my solution, I'm just going to give a very simple setup here. You need to Google a GLINet, which is, full disclosure, I have no interest in GLI. I own no
I'm sorry.
Commission from the sales.
Can we, Costa, let's stop this here and just for 1 second,
just
right?
do your pitch.
This podcast is not a fucking business. None of us has taken $1 of money at all. If whatever sponsor money is coming in is sitting in a bank account somewhere, so we can organize an event someday. Okay, so this notion that we're lining our fucking pockets here somehow, get it out of your heads.
So GLINet, I make no money off GLINet. I just like their products. You don't have to buy GLINet. You can buy anything else.
You don't fact check either. Just go.
But I like GLINet. GLINet are these tiny portable Wi-Fi routers that you can actually use.
A physical device that you buy?
It's a physical device that you can power off a nice battery. And you can actually use that device to connect to the Wi-Fi network, authenticate with the hotel and everything. It doesn't matter if it will offer you a binary to download and all that. And once you're authenticated, you can actually use a VPN on that device and will broadcast a separate Wi-Fi network with encryption and everything that you can use to connect to. And people use it like in all sorts of different ways.
It's like a travel router. It's basically a travel router that plugs into the hotel internet, and it does all of this.
Correct. It's like you can plug it into the hotel internet. You can plug it into like with a GSM modem. You can connect directly to the GSM network. So you can do like all sorts of tricks with it, and people do like all sorts of tricks with them. And they come in like different, more powerful, less powerful, and so on and so on. So the idea is that important people traveling to certain hotels in the world are being targeted specifically by name, by the room. Like the attackers know exactly in which room they're staying. They know exactly who will be in that hotel. And the people, let's say, that are interesting for the attackers will receive all sorts of interesting artifacts. So they can be either social engineering attacks in which they are maybe convinced to download the binary, but also there can be true man-in-the-middle attacks where malicious JavaScript and other things, domain redirection and so on, are used in order to get information out of that victim's computer, laptop, or whatever. And APT29, who is one of our favorite threat actors from the point of view of ingenuity and their ability to adapt to situations, in particular, Microsoft calls Storm 2945 kind of a subcluster of that. I don't want to get into all this subcluster.
It's the SVR though, right? At a high level. At a high level, it is the SVR, right?
Hole. But in the end, allegedly, it's the SVR. I don't know if it's SVR or not. We know it as APT29. I don't call them Midnight Blizzard because I don't know if that's the same as APT29 or it's just like a subcluster of APT or supercluster of APT. Nobody knows. So I just said APT29, which is what people know them as, have been doing this kind of dark hotel attacks as well for some time, by the way. And they've been targeting hotels around the world successfully, and they've been targeting people staying in those hotels around the world in the time vicinity of certain events happening in those hotels. So when there's certain important happenings there, you can be sure that AP29 will be around and they'll be doing their stuff. In particular, Microsoft lists two backdoors. One of them is a Golang backdoor. The other one is a PowerShell script, I think Choco Shell. The other one is Cornflake. I mean, I'm happy that I got the hashes, I got the samples. Allegedly, there's a bunch of other similar samples sitting around, just not on VirusTotal. So hopefully those will be uploaded soon as well. So overall, we're seeing the dark hotel kind of reborn.
The Russian dark hotel.
The wasn't Russian, by the way, dark hotel originally. We're seeing
no. What we're looking at here is the Russian version of
Russian
dark hotel.
Implementation, the Russian version of dark hotel, which does everything they can by man-in-the-middle attacks, trying to redirect you and so on. If you don't use VPNs, if you believe the idea that is being pushed that it's safe to use open Wi-Fi networks without a VPN, which you shouldn't.
What can you say about victimology here? Who are the victims? Where are the hotels located? Did Microsoft share that with us? And from the blog, they're harvesting browser cookies, M365 SSO tokens, Wi-Fi credentials, and there's something here that jumped out at me. They're conducting audio and video surveillance. Did we get evidence they were turning on cameras on machines? What is that about?
That I have not seen myself. That and I think obviously Microsoft probably doesn't want to reveal the victims, or they would get into some sorts of trouble. What I know is there's different entities around the world working on this story. I was surprised, to be honest, when I saw Microsoft publish that. I didn't know that they're going to publish, because I knew that other entities are looking into this story as well, and they're in the middle and processes to collect more information. So I was surprised that Microsoft kind of blew the whistle on this, and they published these technical details.
Interesting.
If you're asking me who are the victims, I don't know who are the victims, but I can kind of suspect who are the victims.
European hotels, you think?
I would say probably hotels all over the world.
Ukraine.
I would say it has something to do with Ukraine negotiations. So if you look at where Ukraine-related negotiations are happening, or if you try to follow that, I would assume that it has something to do with that. Again, I don't have like 100% confirmation or anything. This is just my personal
intuition,
supposition that it has to do something with Ukraine. I don't think it's related to the Iran negotiations. So there's like a lot of negotiations going on, a lot of wars and so on. I think this is probably more towards Ukraine rather than the negotiations with Iran.
You mentioned that Microsoft, you're surprised Microsoft went already. This campaign has been running since May 2026. Like we're in July.
It's a bit early, right?
Right?
No, it's early.
You think it's early?
Oh, yeah, I think it's early. Given how events, Salt Typhoon style events are being disclosed and published about, I think it's a bit early. Yeah, like what, 3 months? Very early.
Juanito, what is your advice for not necessarily diplomats going to these negotiations? You expect them to have decent OPSEC at the very, I don't know. My expectations are high for those folks who are traveling internationally and doing investigations. What is your advice for like non-tech folks without a security guy, a journalist possibly going there to cover a thing? Do you tell your mom and dad about this VPN thing that Costin recommended, travel with an extra thing? Or is this like, what are you telling people around? Like Captive Crunch is a real thing. Dark Hotel was a very, very real thing. It's always attached to these. The Dooku2 thing in hotels was a very, very real thing. What are you telling people?
I mean, it really depends on who I'm talking to. That's actually mostly an issue with the limitations of what we can readily give people that's easy, right? If there was an easy button and all you're telling me is I need to get my parents to pay $50 a month and yeah, it's $50, it's a tax, but they're safe, right? Like we would happily pay that for our parents. The same way that like when we worked at AV companies, right? You'd give people licenses. You're like, everyone in the family has an AV. One of the shameful aspects of this industry becoming completely enterprise centric is like we don't even talk about consumer solutions anymore, right? Like I work at an XDR company. We do great work. We work at enterprise scope. We don't work at consumer scope. Most companies I know don't seem to have any consumer solutions anymore, and VCs don't seem to be willing to invest into that. That's a really long-winded way of saying like I really have no good advice for normal people. I really don't. At the same time, the moniker of normal people is doing this whole thing a disservice, right? Because it's not the people who do cyber who are the most interesting in these attacks. Yes, for specific APTs like the Equation Group, enablement or Reagan, the enablement attacks are important. And that means that IT people and cyber people are interesting as part of those enablement operations. But 90% of the attacks we see, sophisticated as they may be, are about people who are interesting because of what they do in the world, not to do with cyber or computers. And that's what espionage has been about for time immemorial. So if you remember, the very first talk I ever gave was, OPSEC and tradecraft for
my favorite
CTI analysts.
The original Juanito talk, right, Costin?
My very first talk in Punta Cana. And the whole point, that talk had nothing to do with devices. I did not talk about device security at all. I didn't talk about YubiKeys. I didn't tell people what to do with their passwords. I wanted to talk about what made people interesting to intelligence analysts and targeters, and to give people some real world advice, because we in InfoSec have bastardized the term OPSEC. We have bastardized it to mean like computer hygiene. And those two things are not the same thing. Computer hygiene is something we should all have. We should all rotate our passwords and use 2FA and whatnot. That's not the same as operations security. The whole point of that is ensuring that you can carry out your mission successfully. And that's because OPSEC has a scope. OPSEC is supposed to further a specific goal, and that means that there's a limit. It's not an infinite thing. You don't wake up every day and live the way and the Tao of OPSEC. So when I look at situations like this, and you mentioned diplomats, I really do hope that they have amazing support from their intelligence agencies and their minders and their foreign diplomats and foreign services, because they at least know that they live under the threat of being interesting. And that means that people are willing to invest into getting to know them intimately well. And I worry about literally everybody else. And that's where I would put the focus back on all of us, precisely in that we work in the industry that's supposed to help and somehow make it possible for everybody else, not just the diplomats, not just the State Department folks, everybody else to have a reasonable expectation of privacy and security. It is not reasonable to look at normal people and say, don't be interesting, don't bring a phone, go back to using letters, typewrite and shit, right? It's a failure of the personal computing project.
Question for you, Costin. If I'm a traveling executive and I just happen to be staying at a hotel that's compromised, I'm not a target, I'm not among the people that they're actually looking for, am I going to get hit? One. And two, if I don't have this GLI net thing, or I'm never going to get invested in a third-party piece of box to travel with, I already got too much shit to travel with. How can I securely or have a sense of security around connecting to these? I'm a traveling executive, I go there. VPN alone wouldn't help, right? Because if they're stealing SSO tokens before the VPN tunnel establishes, you're still exposed there. What is your recommendation for people? I'm not buying the GLI net. What do I do?
Well,
I'm not going to do what you fucking told me to do.
Before the VPN tunnel establishes. Try to block all the VPN traffic outside the tunnel. And first thing, establish the VPN tunnel. That's a solution.
Yeah, but that means that you're not going to be able to do it when you have a CAPTCHA at a hotel and it needs the DNS to be the normal DNS settings in order to resolve where that captive page is. There's a reason why they're doing it this way. It's also why they can target. Because when you look at a hotel list, you can say, person so-and-so from Lockheed Martin is staying at this room number, and they're going to need to put in that room number to be able to get access to the internet. And that requires normal DNS settings. So I'm not. Well, I'm not. What I'm saying is there's a failure here. I suspect that Cloudflare Warp, the 1.1.1.1 app, might be the closest thing to a good solution here, because it has a captive portal detection that works sometimes. So you can have it on. You can set it so it only works in networks that are not your home network, for example. You can also do this on your phone, right? You can have this sort of specifics, and it will manage the DNS for you. And sometimes, if we're lucky, it will notice that there is a captive portal, that you need to answer that, and it will allow that to pop up without necessarily needing to turn off the VPN and turn off the whatever. But I'm telling you, this is as good as a solution as I can recommend. That's free. They do a great service. It's not a complete solution. It's like an 80% solution.
And the traveling executive I'm talking about, he's not going to look at packets anywhere here. He wants something to click and get it done.
That is the easiest. It's literally a one button click, a small config. I think if there's one thing you want to do to massively improve your security stance while doing this kind of travel, it's Cloudflare Warp. That's what I use. I'll say that much.
All right. Did we get, you mentioned you got samples, so we got good IOPS from Microsoft. We're happy with this disclosure. You're unhappy that they went before the others. Who should we expect to hear from?
I'm very happy.
Do you expect there's more of these coming?
I wanted to say a good thing. I noticed that at least during the last few days, Microsoft has actually published on X about a bunch of stories. Another one was an interesting quick fix attack. No, it was like an interesting click fix attack that leveraged, was it a Binance smart contract, if I'm not mistaken. And I was like surprised just to see more stories from Microsoft with IOCs posted
They're
on
listening to
on
you,
X.
man.
I was like, wow, this is awesome. So I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Shout out to Microsoft. Shout out to all the folks there. I don't know. We give shout outs. We got from Microsoft,
Sure.
we got this How a Mac OS Click Fix campaign Learn to Hide. We got Chain Drop Supply Chain Compromises. They talked about the self-propagating worm in addition to this Midnight Blizzard thing. So we got like 3 bits of output. Maybe it's related to Black Hat and they had to make some noise for some Black Hat meetings and whatnot. But hey, we got something, right?
Absolutely. I would say the APT29 story is definitely a Black Hat level. The other ones are the kind of thing that we would expect Microsoft to publish weekly. Like a good, solid threat intel company, security company should publish something like that on a weekly basis.
All right. A couple other small stories I wanted us to get to. We got an update on China launching a cybersecurity review into Palo Alto network product. I thought we did an episode way back when China had banned Sentinel-1 in what was called in this reporting. You remember, Juanito, when they talked about China banning U.S. and Israeli companies?
And Israeli.
Yeah. So what is this new investigation they're talking about now?
I mean, that's an excellent fucking question. I don't know if it's a new one. It just seems like they're kind of like rattling the cages there. I would point back to the conversation we had when there was that original discussion about U.S. products, Israeli products, and so on. Because, I mean, when you say U.S. and Israeli companies, to me, that feels like a weirdly specific sign. Like, because if you know how many of these big security companies are like big Israel and U.S. places, like Palo Alto as well.
Intel Corporation has R&D in Israel that makes it feel like an Israeli company.
Yeah, but a lot of them have been founded in Israel and then became big global companies. So to me, like when I see those sorts of monikers, I do usually look at Palo Alto and they look at us and we go, and there's a bunch of companies. But what's weird to me is the narrowing down on Palo Alto, because what I said with that original story is, who the fuck is even in China is using these devices? That's really interesting, right? Like, what market penetration even exists in China? So, dependent on that, this story would make a lot more sense to me as like, maybe even like the kind of petty squabbles that you see between rivaling salespeople, where you go, hey, this government organization in Guangdong is using Palo Alto instead of using Huawei. Like, what the fuck? And you
more like an internal audit, right?
Yeah, well, you want to push an internal audit to happen so that you can then come sell them the Huawei thing they should have bought from the beginning. And so those things, like, I don't see what the security story here is. Now, if we were
it's the same as the US doing to TP-Link, isn't it the same thing? We are saying TP-Link is a national security issue. The Chinese are basically saying they review this as a necessary and lawful step, citing US cyber activities perceived as threatening Chinese interests. It's the same language, but we use for TP-Link, they're using to say, hey.
It's only if... Like, when you say it's the same, I always, like, some part of me kind of dies, right? Because you're overgeneralizing. But I would say if it's what I just described, then no, it's not the same unless we find out that TP-Link had routers somewhere and this was someone working with the U.S. government to try to get a Cisco contract through. You know what I mean? Like, that would be the same. And... Now, if we wanted to generalize, if we wanted to actually have a legitimate discussion around this that's not about this specific thing in China, I don't know that we should react poorly to the idea that somebody wants to do open evaluations and benchmarks and whatnot of security products, right? Like, that's like, I didn't like how we did the thing to TP-Link in the US, But I had no objection to how the UK NCSC did the thing with Huawei a few years back, where they released a fucking full-on report that was like, well, look at how shitty this software is. Look at how many fucking bugs are in here. This is really terrible stuff. And you go, okay. I mean, frankly, I would be happier if that was the first in many reports that also included Cisco and everybody else, right? Like they looked at American companies, British companies, because that's what we should actually want in this industry, is not to just, we've gotten so used to it being okay for vulnerabilities to just live in these devices forever that we're like, well, can you stop telling people that they're there? And it's like, what the fuck are we even playing at?
Let's also, by the way, not forget there was this story in February that Palo Alto was kind of softening the attribution on China, not to get the
not to ruffle feathers.
Exactly, right. And perhaps this is, just the carrot and the stick,
Mm-hmm.
Hey, all those devices are built in China, right? They rely on Chinese factories. I mean, they're so
True.
deeply embedded in China as well that there's like a lot of risk slapping that could possibly be happening as well.
Well, this is one area where we see the soft power play. How do you think, that's because Palo Alto is like a mid-size-ish company, but like, how do you think these conversations play out at Apple and Google and all these companies that have like massive reliance on Chinese manufacturing? Like, you're just catching a glimpse, bro.
Get well soon to Palo Alto. We gotta
stray. They don't deserve that.
No. I'm pivoting very quickly through some stories. We're an hour and 45 minutes in, and you know me, I'm ready to wrap things up. Costin, we got a ranking from a French newspaper ranking civilian intelligence agencies, ranking intelligence agencies around the world, and our friends at our Dutch friends at the AIVD were ranked third in the most effective intelligence service in Europe, which means that they've
Credit where credit's due.
Lost a few. No, it sounds to me like they lost a few pegs. We used to have them number one.
Number one.
Yeah, so a couple of things. Like why do we care? Like, what is this ranking system? Why is it important? Who gives a shit? Like, is this just content creation, or is this something that's relevant to us?
I think it's interesting. First of all, this was in dutchnews.nl, and it was also published by a French magazine, L'Express. And I think it's important to say the number one was MI6, and the number two was a French DGC, le Département Général de la Sécurité d'État. Parlez le France, oui. And what was it? Ukraine
was up there
was
too.
a fourth. Yeah, it was like a fourth position, with the Germany's BND in the fifth position. We've always, I know, we've known that the Dutch services are some of the best out there. At least when it comes to cyber, their names appear a lot in leaked Snowden documents and similar documents. So in my opinion, that is the best ranking, is looking at different slides or leaked documents from all these famous cases and reading between the lines and see who makes what kind of slides. Obviously, well, like our favorite slides come from the Canadian security establishment. Yes. Those are our favorite slides for sure.
Implemented by morons.
And reading between the lines, you clearly see that the Dutch have been cooperating with Five Eyes for a very long time and being very effective at that.
Juanito, what makes an intelligence agency the most effective? What does most effective mean?
I have no idea in what way they're describing it, right? But I like that I like this more because I didn't. There's so many ways these places act, right? And we don't know about 95% of them. But some of the other intelligence agencies probably know, maybe half, right? So when they do this kind of shit, it's actually very cheeky, because they're kind of saying, well,
it's like an internal newsletter.
Yeah. It's like there's the part of this where you go, why are you saying that? Because you guys have partnered up and you're just giving credit to your buddies, at the AIVD, and you're like, yeah, working with these guys was cool. Or are you saying this because you're like, yeah, we know what you motherfuckers are up to and respect, right? Well done. But I think it's funny either way. I think it's cute.
I just want to note that the sourcing for it comes from a ranking published by French magazine L'Express based on a survey of 60 intelligence officials in 25 countries. So they must have like had a bunch of sourcing to go say, hey, I'll send you the spreadsheet, rank 1 through 5, like a CFP voting system, and see who's the most effective. Shout out to all the winners. The losers get better. What else? What else can we talk about, Costin? The other thing I wanted to talk, the last thing on the story here is, Juanito, you were on CNN. Your colleague Tom Hegel was on national media here in the U.S. talking about these Iranian link actors rewriting PLC logic at U.S. water facilities. It became kind of a political thing. I want to discredit. I want to like get away from that and just focus on what we're seeing. What can you? Why is this mainstream news story here in the United States?
I mean, I think it's more that because of the politics and the context, right? Like it's too much of a lightning rod. You're almost, the Iran war is a very controversial thing in the U.S. at this time. It's a very politically loaded thing, and somebody coming out and saying that there was this is a pretty low stakes hack. Like nobody's like looking at it being like, oh my God, what a legit fucking attack. But if you overgeneralize and really squint your eyes, you're giving the media everything they could possibly want to spin out a crazy news cycle. Because you're taking somebody probably using Shodan and some pretty low-hanging fruit to hit some like remote management consoles for for some PLCs that are connected to water. Yeah, I mean, it's not that it's irrelevant, but that gives them limited access to what they can alter. They could, from what we're told, they couldn't, necessarily poison the water supply. They might have to have like water boiling notices. Okay, like
the Iranian linkage is established.
We
when
don't
you say someone
really,
with Shodan access. It could be a guy in a basement, but yeah,
we don't really know. So here's the thing: we're not being given any kind of report, as far as I know, that has any actual technical details. We do have certain organizations in Minnesota that have very quickly come out and said things like, oh, it's the Cyber Avengers, or like, this is Iran. And they wouldn't be super out of the realm of possibility. This is the kind of thing we've seen those groups do in the past, in the US and other places and so on. So it's not totally far-fetched, but I don't know how much of that is like Vivint versus like someone actually looked at some technical stuff and said, no, this is Cyber Avengers, and then that leaked to other organizations in some TLP report. So that's what's making this so shitty. It's like, it's a real thing. It's not a huge thing, but it's not a thing, depending on who did the thing, but we don't know independently who did the thing. And there's people saying that these people did the thing, and
there's seen no real technical evidence anywhere
before. Yeah, we've seen those people do the thing before, so it's not super far-fetched, but that doesn't mean that they did the thing, right? Like, that's the story.
But if it's true that the Iranians have access to local water systems here, I mean, it should send up alarm bells among like civilian audience here.
Well,
and I say that because this kind of prepositioning in the event of war has been discussed in the past when our own government warned that the Chinese were prepositioning in Guam and some OT and ICS infrastructure there. It ties. What I'm saying is I understand why it's a CNN story. And the fact that we have, why don't we have any technical evidence?
Wait. I think it's shitty that we don't have any technical evidence, but I have no idea what technical evidence is out there to be gotten. Because, for example, like, who is responding to this, right? Like, it's probably the water utilities people, and I'm curious if there is some DHS component or any kind of support. And then, like, did the FBI get involved and so on? There's probably some decent reports somewhere. We're just not seeing them. As to like the alarm bells stuff, well, I mean, I think those alarm bells are like running out of battery, right? Like they've been fucking going off for like 10, 15 fucking years. So like, I don't know what the alarm bell actually is. At the same time, I would like to not ever put the Iranians and the Chinese on the same fucking like pedestal. The Chinese have capabilities, that the Iranians could only fucking dream of in 1,000 years, which is why, like, the Iranians hit some PLC connected systems, but what they could do with it was not very strategically significant. It's not like they could shut off the water no, there's very limited levers that they could play with. So I wouldn't even call it prepositioning. I would call it, like finding a little bit of something that isn't nothing, but then, doing the usual thing of like trying to make it seem like it's a critical vulnerability and blah, blah, blah. You're like, nah,
so we shouldn't worry about our water supplies being compromised and tampered
we should
with.
worry about how vulnerable they are, and we should worry that more powerful players could definitely do bad things. We should worry that there is a player right now that wants to do bad things. We should take minor solace that they're not good enough to do the bad things that we currently know can be done. But we should also be concerned that that only matters if they don't happen to stumble upon some way, because there just so happens to be a switch somewhere, because these assholes are willing to flip the switch. So yes, we should be worried about that, right?
We should also be worried that a lot of these devices are connected to the internet, misconfigured with default admin passwords that are available everywhere. They're reachable from Shodan. Like, there's a million other secure by design, secure by default things that has not happened at all that leads us here. So there's a lot of things to worry about. Costin, how does this story play to you? I know you always say there's no IOX, it's a marketing report. Like, what is the marketing here?
Stop. Like, advice to journalists: stop covering stories where there's no IOX, right? No, like conspiracy. Ryan would be asking, like, why Minnesota? I mean, nowadays it seems there's like a lot of bad things happening in Minnesota. I don't know. Is that like
did conspiracy Ryan not say at the very top, I'm not going to politicize this?
Just gonna say, I don't know.
Well, is that why Minnesota? I think my point was to say, I think we should hold the media a little bit more responsible on this one, because you gave them, like, you just threw the dice, and the dice landed on Iran, Minnesota, critical infrastructure, cyber attack, and whatever. And they were like, fucking news cycle.
Let me get 22 and CNN here to
bingo. Yeah, dude. And like, I'm sitting there just because think about it. Why did they like that? Because you take a contentious, like, governor relationship with the president, an issue the president is obviously going to be concerned about and sensitive to, the Iran war, something that people are very politically charged about, right? And then cyber attack, which is a thing everyone's fucking scared of right now. And
water,
it's wonderful.
You poison the water supply.
Oh, yeah. Oh, right. I don't drink the stuff, but like, yeah, So I understand, but I think we do need to kind of look at the news right now and be like, I have 4 minutes to try to turn down the hype from like 14 on Iran attacks critical infrastructure in the U.S. and Anthropic model attacks companies in cyber goes rogue, and tonight at 9, right? It's like, what the fuck, man?
You did good, and your jacket fits. Your jacket fits. You look good.
You're auctioning it.
Yeah, I am. I'm gonna sign it like Jensen, right, and like auction it at the next LabsCon.
We're right at the 2-hour mark, and I want to just touch on one other story that just crossed our paths. It's this Liechtenstein AML register hack. There's like 31,000 legal entities exposed. According to some of the reporting, Reuters reporting actually, hackers breached Liechtenstein anti-money laundering register during the night of July 29-30th, accessing data of 31,000 companies, foundations, and trusts. Costin, this is not quite
I put the story there, right?
Yeah, I know. You put it there and saying this is pretty significant. And that was how I was going to spin the question. Why have we not heard about this and it's not on the front page of the New York Times? It seems significant enough.
Because for a moment I was afraid you're going to ask me, what is Liechtenstein?
Well, I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
Like even like for Europeans, I tell you the truth. I passed through Liechtenstein myself, and I almost didn't notice that I was passing through Liechtenstein. It was like really, really small.
It's the most fucked up flyover state shit I've ever heard.
I don't want to offend anyone, but just saying like it's easy to overlook that. And a story about a pretty small country, which on the other hand is like really, really.
It's always like that though. The Panama Papers, nobody knew where Panama was, right?
Correct. From what I hear from friends and sources, this is a high-profile story. And why would anyone hack the anti-money laundering register? Again, we know why. Like it's the same reason why people would hack companies like Swift or like I don't know, banks in the UK. And generally, this attracts maybe three kinds of attackers. On one hand, it attracts the Lazarus group, like the North Koreans who just want to make some money, an APT. It attracts cyber criminals, and then it attracts like the high-end APTs who just want to, get some additional information that allows them to track the Hezbollah money laundering,
an activist component here too.
Counterterrorism or things like that. I don't think that activists worry too much about those kind of things like money laundering. They do, of course, worry about governments. But here, like if you ask me if there's a hunch about this, like we discussed it so many times, my hunch is that this is a big story. And it feels like it's one of those stories where it's not the Lazarus group and it's not cyber criminals.
So what is your spidey sense telling you it is then?
Like those kinds which are angry and sparky, like depending on the angles.
Juanito, you got a thought on this? I did just cross this morning. I didn't really see the story until this morning. But Costin wanted us to plug it.
I have no thoughts.
There's no IOCs, by the way. Like I've been keeping an eye on the story. There's no IOCs. Only conflicting statements, angry people, angry politicians, worried politicians trying to exploit this for their own good, and so on.
I mean, look, to Kostin's point about it being angry and sparky is like, this to me sounds like this is my version of water wet, because like, this sounds like a legitimate espionage target to me, and it sounds like somebody picked some shit up that they needed. If you tell me that it got leaked or that they got ransomware or whatever, then I'd be like, oh, what the fuck? But this to me sounds like somebody's doing their job, and they maybe tripped up. Right?
I like how it says the hack dealt a blow to Liechtenstein's reputation as a secure, discreet center of international finance.
That's why
Liechtenstein has become like more Swiss than the Swiss in what they provide right now.
All right, that's our show for this week. While you guys think about your shout-outs, I want to say congratulations to Juanito. I saw you announced on your LinkedIn, Mr. LinkedIn over here, playing LinkedIn games. Announced a big promotion. Is this a big promotion? Distinguished Fellow and Advisor to the ELT. Now that you've announced it, you got to tell us what that means. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. No, I mean it's it's been a very long and storied career at S1 so far. This is like a new step that I'm actually pretty excited about. S1 has been like Sentinel-1 has been an amazing platform for me. Like from Migo bringing me over here and like basically giving me the keys to Sentinel Labs and getting to do whatever I want, and like getting to start and end LabsCon on my terms. For 5 years, they've let me make LabsCon exactly whatever I wanted it to be. They've never forced my hand, never tried to sprinkle marketing on it, sponsor talk, nothing. Never have they ever interfered with it. They've let me publish whatever I wanted, be it, U.S., Israeli, whomever. Never have they ever stopped me from any of that. They've allowed me to hire an amazing team of researchers and foster the stuff. I got to create an entire organization called ThreatOps with like more than 300 and some people, in cahoots with the man, the myth, Steve Stone, who is probably the best change management executive I have ever witnessed operate in my life. And I spent, a very privileged year taking notes as I watched this guy be what an executive should be, and only, that I could only aspire to do. And then I got to take on the AI innovation mission under Gregor Stewart and bring the team and get to modernize a threat intel research team into being quote unquote AI native, if that's what we want to call it, but really being AI empowered to fuck with AI things. And, that's been an amazing journey. At the same time, I was looking at like my blog timeline from 2025 and 2026, and like, I've stopped publishing my own research. I've stopped I haven't had the bandwidth to write down any of the things that I'm grateful to this podcast for basically being like the captain's log of like whatever interesting idea suddenly popped up when I actually got to talk to friends and think about something, ideally deeply. But I haven't gotten to write any of that stuff down. I haven't gotten to really be strategic and engage in the conversation. So I'm really grateful to Sentinel-1 in this, latest vote of confidence of basically getting to be the first fellow in the company and getting to have the freedom to focus on the research and
we'll
to be a trusted advisor, right? Well, hopefully, yeah.
Yeah. More papers,
more
please.
Advice.
You need to
more
write
advice,
more.
At least.
You need to write more. Costin, close the show with some shout-outs, please.
I have no advice to share this time, except one thing which I really wanted to mention, which is that the 5th tranche of UAP files dropped on Friday from the Department of War. And if you're wondering, it's a bit of the same, like nothing really big or special. So it's just like movies of tiny balls, flying through the Middle East or like in other conflict areas. We're still waiting for the real thing, for the photos of aliens, and the flying vehicles. Until then, we just have to, be content with what we have available. What does it say?
On a serious note, kind of. What does that say? Is there is it teetering out into
ready.
Nothingness?
To me, we are not ready. There's a few interesting interviews in the circles, in my circles, with people saying that we are, let's say, well, it's not a question of will or like wanting to publish more, but it's a question of being allowed to publish more by
who?
People who are by things that are in charge.
Oh,
that
wow.
are in charge.
Jesus, you took me down a rabbit hole there. Go ahead, Juanito.
So I'll pull a Costin move and do something similar. There was a story this week that I wasn't sure if we were gonna touch on or if we could touch on because it's obviously very touchy. But there's a story that came out, Patrick Howell O'Neill and Jake Bleiberg, yes. And they talked about basically a cluster of suicides in Cyber Command, in the cyber forces in the U.S. And, having gotten to spend some time with very close friends at Cyber Command, we kind of touched on it a little. I want to abstract from that a little bit, only a little bit, and just say, like, the amount of folks that I've talked to in the past few months at Black Hat, at other places, who are dealing with, like, depression and anxiety, people who are starting therapy, people who are losing parents, even you, Ryan, like health issues with your parents and stuff like that. Like everybody's, I've been dealing with a ton of shit myself. I try to be open about it. And I feel like it's important to kind of keep that going, mostly because I hear from people, man, I never realized just how closed off a topic it is in American culture. And really in most cultures, right, where people are just uncomfortable talking about therapy, they're uncomfortable talking about medication, about, any mental health issues. And the truth is that, like, we are an industry that's not just immune to it, but more importantly seems to have a higher propensity towards this in some ways, right? We know the legends that we've loved in the hacking circles, who there's a lot of drinking, there's a lot of drugs, there were drug problems, there are people that we've lost There are even way more stories if you talk to the old school hackers and people that came out of the intelligence community. Same, I'm sure, is applying to Cyber Command as we talk about this, but people have mental health issues. Brilliant people tend to have even more of a propensity towards comorbidities, OCD, and all these other things that like people deal with, depression, bipolar. Like there's a lot of stuff that folks have to deal with. The intelligence community, I think it has turned this into a fairly toxic environment when you consider that it's, hey, you can only deal with this by drinking because you can't go to a therapist, because you can't take medication, because if you get diagnosed, you can't do the job you love and you can't serve your country.
Weed and
you can't smoke your way out of this. Well, and there's an argument to be made that I'd rather they be smoking weed than just drinking through this. But in any case, like I've seen a lot of people walk out of those spaces just to be able to have treatment and to be able to have more of that, and who've told me terrible stories about, hey, so-and-so who was fucking brilliant, who you never heard of, who was in a mental health facility or who killed themselves, 6 years ago. I don't want to rock on this. It's just, I don't know that this only applies to the services. I just think we're all in a really high stakes environment. We like to think of this as a community. It doesn't feel like it sometimes. It's definitely an industry. And in being an industry, I think it's in some ways can be quite toxic, and in some ways can be pretty damaging to the talent and to the people that are here. So to whatever extent me being flippant about talking about my meds and depression and dealing with stalking, dealing with harassment, self-harm, friends, and all these, shitty situations makes people feel like they can talk about it more. I hope that helps people who may feel that they need help. I've talked to people this month about like, hey, you talk about this, like, hey man, yeah, it's okay. It's okay to go see a therapist. It's okay to try medication. It's okay. Look, there's this test that you can do that helps, show you genetically what medications might help more and which ones less. This is what happens if you start. Maybe you don't like it, you can stop. Like there's just so many ways in which like we need to normalize, especially among us men, that it's okay to go to therapy. Everyone gets depressed sometimes. There are medications for anxiety. You don't need to live in a shitty way. So I look out for yourselves, guys, because like these employers are not, even when they want to.
Fascinating reporting from our friend Patrick Howell O'Neill over at Bloomberg. I'll put a link to that story there. I recommend people give it a read. Before we go, I want to give a shout out, Costin, to Andrada Fiscutian, the Romanian journalist who I've met a couple of times at our old press stores. I know you're familiar with her. She announced that she's working on a BBC World documentary on the teenagers who wired Romania. And it clicked into my brain because the first time I went to Bucharest many years ago, I was amazed at how high-speed internet was part of your infrastructure in a way that it was just mind-blowing. When in America here, we would scramble to get a Wi-Fi from a restaurant and it had the shittiest service. And I went to Romania, this country that was supposedly the poorest of the European countries, and your internet was mind-blowing. She's doing a BBC World Service. I think it's an audio piece on the teenagers who wired Romania, the idea of this DIY mentality that came up in Bucharest at the time. Shout out to Andrada. She does good work, and I'm looking forward to seeing that. I'm sure that touched and resonated with you a little bit too, Costin.
She's been working on this story for quite a while, and she actually found some of the people who kind of started these associations essentially around Bucharest. Initially, they were just associations. People simply block people. I don't know how you call them in the US, people from the block. Right?
HOAs, homeowners associations.
That's not an HOA. Come on, man.
HOA?
That's insulting. That's a homeowners association, like a little gang that controls your neighborhood.
It tells you that you can't paint your house with green, yes.
Block people from the block.
Yeah.
Who are just throwing wires, stopping the traffic just to throw a wire, sometimes with an arrow Like we did that as well, shooting like an arrow across the street to the other side so we can pull a cable over like an UTP cable. And it's been like amazing. I remember like the first time I went to I changed our apartment, so I went in like to live in a new place with rent. And I asked like around, hey, how do I get internet? And it's like, well, we have a fix for you, man. Like, no worries. Like, someone just came and like they threw with a stone. Like, really, they threw the cable with a stone with a potato. I think it was not a stone. I apologize. It was a potato
Over the wall.
So they threw the potato
window on the
off
other
the
side.
window, just threw the potato with the cable, and somebody just caught the potato on the other side where the internet was coming from, and it was just
taped it together. Yeah,
a few like 300 meters cable, and there I had internet.
Great stories. I'm glad Andrade is going to be documenting that. I look forward to that. Anything else, guys?
So much.
That's our show for this week.
Be safe. Yeah,
be safe. We'll catch you again next week. Peace.